Okay, we are now recording. Okay, good evening. My name is Maria Morelli. I'm a senior planner in the planning department, and the Fisher Hill West Uses Advisory Committee is assembled tonight, December 8th. I will start off with Steve Hyken,
Here.
Carol Goodman,
Here.
Steven Sousa,
Here.
Carlos Rudrejo,
Here.
Michael Roper,
Here.
and the chair, Bernard Green.
Here. Okay, so let's get going. Main item on the agenda is review the draft scope of work for requests for proposals for our ongoing project. So why don't we just start discussing that?
Okay, sure. I'm happy to pull up the revised draft so that you can see how I incorporated. And for everyone who's assembled, this is a request for proposal for an architecture and site planning consultant who will be testing out different scenarios and also estimating costs and conducting community engagement. We looked at this last month. We got some productive comments from this committee, and I've incorporated them. I just want to pause here and say that I did get a question from Carlos Rudrejo, who's the vice chair, who had asked between meetings what the selection process would be like. Now, that was an excellent question, and I'm remiss for not going over that with you. But what we would do here is have the committee present, at interviews. We would also have some key staff people like Melissa or Charlie Simmons, Kara Bruton, myself, and also one or two people from the building commission. What they're serving, they're just it's a very broad board, and they're not part of they're basically cover real estate, construction, and also facilities. There are people on that board who work in the private sector. So there's also a good skill set that complements this board. So that would be the process there. There's also a parallel study that would go on that would be focused on shuttle options, what those routes might be, some efficiencies, as well as scoping out different service models and costs, as that could be a key factor in how you make recommendations to the select board. So let me just pull up that draft. Okay, and we will start at the top, which is, I think when I had gone through the list of the different configurations that the committee wanted to see, and that's a few pages down, it turned out to be more like 9 to 15. So we can see how that shakes out. But from that, this committee would recommend 3 to 5 uses that at least is in the charge, which is posted on the project page. And from that point, the select board would whittle that down to 1 to 3 to scope out for feasibility studies. And it's helpful to give like an overarching to the general public and so forth, really what the overarching criteria or charge is for this committee. And I've just repeated that here and that's posted on the website. So this is nothing that I've introduced anew.
Okay, can I, Maria?
Yes.
When people with respect to people's comments, if they are typos and things like that, and I have a few, could you just send them to Maria offline, so we're not talking about those things, but really focusing on the substantive matters in this proposal?
Yes. Okay. All right. See if there's anything new. The urban design goals were just lower I just decided to give them a heading. And I think these were things we discussed. Not sure if there's anything that you would add. They're pretty general. So it's really like sensitivity to the park, the residential neighborhood, scale, intensity of use, for example, frontage elements, integrating the use with the residential neighborhood, safe walkable streetscape, access and parking amenities designed to avoid congestion, and incorporate sustainable site design measures. And there were just a few things, not a prescription, but just to illustrate what that might be. This is project phase, has a pre-planning, and then there are 4 phases: community visioning, the site testing, facilitating community preferences, and the committee recommendations. I just embellished a little bit more what we expected to see in the report on existing conditions, certainly the status of the existing site, the topography and access roads, the characterization of the surrounding context, any zoning and historic preservation details to note, and any assembly of due diligence, that documentation that was already assembled for the town.
Maria,
Yes,
on
please.
page 2, process phases, tasks, and deliverables.
Mhm.
I think the idea of which we mentioned at the very beginning, which is financial feasibility. I think that should be added with probably the siting test fits.
Well, they're not really doing financial feasibility. They're just going to really, it's really going to be just looking at costs, but financial feasibility gets into a lot more detail that we're not scoped for. So
who's doing the financial feasibility of?
well, when you recommend your 3 to 5 or whatever you recommend, then the select board will narrow that down, and then there will be that more detailed financial feasibility based on those 1 or 2 or 3 or however they want to test for feasibility.
But wouldn't it be more useful to make sure that at least the 3 or 4 that we propose are financially viable?
No, well, financial feasibility involves how you're going to be funding the project, and that's not really going to be
Well,
you know,
it's sorry, but I thought it was funding the project, but also taking into account daily, annual budget costs, and so
it's
at
going to be
least so that we have some
construct.
numbers in there. But saying, for example, if we do this, it'll add $1 million to the budget in costs,
Mhm.
FTEs or whatever it is, so that the same way that we say, okay, it physically fits on the site, I think we need to know how it financially fits in in the future of our town.
Right. So you have review criteria, and like I've stated here, there are some funding or financial issues that this consultant is not going to answer for you. That's really going to be a Melissa question. And you are going to be actually meeting with, the finance department and so forth with different town departments to address those very questions. But that's not something this consultant can answer. Okay, it's really going to be about the costs. Is that helpful? We're just looking at what the scope of work
It's
is for
helpful.
the
I'm not sure if I
consultant.
agree with it, but it's helpful.
Well,
when we've done feasibility studies in the past, when I was working at a large architecture firm, part of it was actually, what is going to be the cost of running this facility. So,
right.
but I see your point, and maybe it's part of our recommendation, from recommendation information from other sources rather than this consultant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve?
Steve?
We're asking the consultants to estimate construction costs, right?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
not necessarily operating costs or
No,
what
right.
the impact on the town's budget or what sources of funding might be
Right.
involved.
Those questions would be addressed by the department heads as far as they can go, and Melissa. You certainly will be talking to those people about any operations considerations and staffing issues and so forth. I mean, one of the reasons why we're doing a shuttle study is to understand, if the town were responsible for a shuttle service, what would that annual cost be to the town? But this is focused just on the outside third-party consultant who's not going to know, what it costs to hire staff, if there needs to be additional staff.
So
and-
to
and so
Steve's
forth.
point, I think the construction costs should be noted. So
Yes,
that,
I do have that more specifically in that phase.
Okay.
But I can add it here.
I think they are noted somewhere, but
Yep.
Carlos, are you done? Because I have, since we're on at this point, I do have, I have a number of comments and questions, but
I'm done.
one of them is right here where we're looking at this overview of the phases. When we get into the detail, it wasn't clear to me between the community visioning phase and then phase 2 siting test fits. If we go to the language and the detailed language, and it wasn't clear to me what the consultant's role in translating all the community visioning that's done into whether it's 8 or 15
Yep. Right. So,
teams, not all of which I assume are going to be
right. Well, that's where you
That's
come in.
it is
This,
on the
that's where
site.
this committee comes in. This is kind of a sort of like project milestones. And but I'm just, there would be a phase where, and maybe I don't have it here, I'm just thinking maybe I have it in a more detailed schedule that I'm writing on my own, but there does have to be a phase where, and I might have it written in the narrative, where the consultant is actually working with you to, you're the ones who are looking at this, everything that's been submitted, and looking at your charge
Yeah. But what I'm
and
saying,
directing the consultant as to what they're going to be doing site test fits for.
but what I'm saying is between March phase 1 ideas and April phase 2 test fits, if I look at the consultant's tasks, I don't see a clear statement that the consultant is somehow responsible for taking this broad range of ideas and, narrowing it down to even, 15 options, which I assume not all of which are going to be selected for test fits. So I don't see that in the
It says
consultant's
here, if you
work.
look at the deliverables,
Yeah.
it says, take feedback from committee as the committee advises on final list of ideas to stay within scope. So all of these deliverables means that the consultant has to be available for meetings where they're going to be taking direction from the committee.
Okay. Could I have a couple other comments?
Of course.
One is, I know that this grant is conditioned on that we at least study the possibility of housing on the site. We don't necessarily have to recommend housing on the site or housing in combination with other uses.
Right.
But since it is required, that's one of the things that has to be looked at. I think that information ought to be made available to the consultant, even in a sentence or two. That's one.
It is. Yep. We
oh, it
have
is?
that
I
here.
didn't-
Absolutely. There at least, I just have to remember where I put it. There's a whole list of things. Oh yeah. Okay. So let me just orient you. I think we're on, it's phase 2. I'm scooting down to page 6. And it's starting with A, test fish shall explore the following scenarios. A, it's, town administrators or the rec center, which I think you wanted me to be just kind of generic, the outdoor pool complex for all ages, a housing program with an affordable component. Now, this could be a private developer or it could be donation of land to the housing authority. And then this housing program has just different iterations. We're just trying to feel things out. It could be townhomes. It could be just like larger mansion apartments. And then, just to be consistent with remember, we got this grant, which is precious money. There's not much of it from the state through their housing choice program. And because we didn't know if this was going to be like a BHA project or if it was going to be something else, I just said at least 50% affordable. Has no bearing on what you recommend, what the outcomes are, what the select board decides to do, what people vote on. It's just a commitment to explore.
Oh, by the way, I like that 50% affordable thing because you mentioned it came out of the study that the Affordable Housing Overlay District Committee,
Yes.
which
Yep.
shows that to be a viable mix. So I like that part. So, all right, I guess I see that
Yep.
Again, we don't have to recommend a housing use, but it is certainly one of the things that's listed to be studied. Okay.
Right.
I have a little bit further, a fairly,
Sorry, Steve. Sorry to interrupt, but can I follow up on this housing
yeah,
issue? So when you look at the other test fits, you have intergenerational recreation and community center proposal.
Mhm.
You have outdoor pool, and then housing program with all this other information or all
Yep.
these other
Mhm.
items. Can we, because I don't agree with, I don't think that the private developer or um, market housing is actually what the voters had any intention to use this land. I do agree that it was used, it was promoted as municipal services that included affordable housing, but never um, market housing. I think it
What
would
do
only
you
be.
mean? Are you just looking
Well,
at
I'm
townhomes?
saying I think it would only be fair to leave the heading as plain as the other headings are. For example, outdoor pool complex
Well,
for
I'm
all
not
ages.
following. We
It
have
would be
an
housing
affordable
program
housing component.
with an affordable component, and then not have the subheadings below. Not even have may involve this
I have
land.
to give them an idea of what they would be. They have to scope this accurately. And that's why we kind of have to be upfront with some of the things we even think might come out of this.
Well,
And
and I think
you haven't, you have, excuse me,
as a committee, we have to agree that
but you
market
have,
housing is an option.
um, okay, so let's go, what do you mean by market housing? Something with
That
15%
anything that is
affordable?
not 100%, anything that is not 100% BHA affordable housing is acceptable on this site.
Well, no, I mean,
No.
I
Bernard,
mean, well,
look,
we can't
Hold on.
have, you know, a market rate housing, I think is what you're trying to say.
right.
But I mean, there are a lot of options, including BHA, but also including housing that is above BHA's level, that would be so-called workforce housing.
But it
Um,
would be, but it would be 100% affordable.
So I have to just interrupt because Carlos, we've had this conversation. Carlos is under the impression that there is no disposition, so that the committee here doesn't have within its charge the a possibility of recommending a disposition or a part of the sale of part of the land to a private developer. I honestly don't know what the voters discussed, but within the
well,
charge that I inherited, it does say that disposition could be one of the outcomes that you recommend. So that's why this allows for both possibilities of 100 totally 100% affordable, or affordable with some percentage, or a housing with some percentage affordable.
Yes, and as you, Bernard and Maria, as you know, I've asked that you circulate the ballot question to the committee so that the committee can see what the original ballot question was and how it shows very clearly municipal use, which I think, again, affordable, 100% affordable housing with no market rate housing is an appropriate use. But if fine, I think since
no, okay,
since this committee is in charge of this thing, I think we should put it to a vote whether it mentions non-affordable housing or not.
well, I mean, look, the ballot initiative said, you know, government purposes or municipal purposes. And that, you know, implies, you know, affordable housing, you know, some level of affordability. So, you know, anything that suggests that we're talking about market rate housing, I think we should take out. But I don't,
It says it right there, at least 50%
You've been
affordable.
discussing all
okay,
along, you've been discussing all along, folks, that you might sell a portion of the site to fund a municipal use. And that could be private housing development. So we also don't know what people might recommend, what ideas they have for this.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I don't think we need to we need to put in language about 50% affordable and let the consultant, come back to us with, with their ideas. I mean, we can say, somewhere.
I mean, but
general
Bernard, we're saying,
municipal
yes, but
uses.
we're saying affordable components instead of
Okay,
affordable
let's not
housing,
nitpick
period.
this.
I don't, I think I'm with Maria on this one. I don't recall the exact language, but it seems to me that we could be talking about mixed income housing. I think Maria is correct that there might be a reason to
I
consider
will-
disposition of a portion of the site to generate cash for other uses. I
I
mean,
will post the wording of the ballot on the chat so we can all see it. But go ahead, Steve, you can
just
continue.
on this point, I'm okay with this more detailed description of options.
okay. Any further questions, Steve? You were, I think, at the
On that
bottom.
point, yeah, I actually, if you go a little bit further down, I just caught a glitch in the some of the language about the consultants, what skills the consultant needs to bring to this project. It looked like some of that language really belonged in the RFP for the transit shuttle
Oh,
consultant.
it could be. What I was trying to do was have some parity on how the process. So I could have maybe forgotten to take
Okay.
some
Yeah,
transit
I mean,
language
I
out.
could tell you, it's down at sort of towards the end of the, towards
Yeah.
in the consultant's application requirements.
I do want them to scope up parking demand. So that's actually something I'm not going to give to the transit consultant because shuttle, like that microtransit study is really going to be self-contained and not really.
Okay, but I'm just looking at page 9, top of page 9. These are consultant minimum application requirements.
Yeah.
Item 4, a detailed description of 2 or more
Oh, yeah.
mobility.
Yes, that is
concepts and a
definitely,
writing
that is
sample
my
of a
error.
mobility.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just wanted to get that.
Yep.
My overall concern with this RFP is still related to the issues around community engagement.
Okay.
Okay, well, if we finished with this piece of it, I mean, I think that the housing thing hasn't been resolved. And I don't see why we can't just take out the 50% language and the rest of that clause.
Okay, so why don't we just,
I just don't want this to be an issue of contention.
fine, but they have to estimate construction costs.
Right,
And
and they'll
it's,
come up with, some ideas and.
okay, we'll just say housing
What
component
page
within
is that on? I'm looking for it on my computer.
6.
Page 6. Okay. Okay. 6. Yeah, I don't think we need to tell them anything more than apartment building with more compact footprint and taller height.
So would you be
The
okay
rest-
with housing
rest of
program
that-
with an affordable component and just leave it at that?
No affordable component, just affordable.
I'm looking for what
Okay.
you're going to post, Carlos,
I know.
to the language in the chat.
Yes, I'm looking.
Okay,
I got it. I just have to post it.
okay.
Okay, can we agree on that?
Just want to say affordable housing.
Including affordable housing, to include affordable housing.
Okay, so housing program to include affordable
Yeah.
units.
So let's move
Do
on.
other members of the committee have any thoughts?
Well, I'm
Carlos,
okay with leaving
Carla,
it.
why are you raising your hand? We're not at public comment yet.
Are you getting to public comment at the end? I'll be happy to take my hand down anytime,
Well, you should take your hand down because we're not at public comment, right?
But you will be getting to public comment at some point?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I posted the ballot question.
Okay, so let's move on from this.
Okay.
General municipal purposes. I mean, housing, yes, we would like to see housing, and it doesn't say it has to be affordable or 100% affordable.
Well, yeah, I would say affordable housing is municipal. Non-affordable housing is not municipal because then the whole town is municipal.
No, come on. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
this
think we're
is-
splitting hairs. We really, maybe we should just
Well,
talk.
we'll move
we should-
on, but I think this is definitely one location that I would split hairs if that's what
Well,
we're
we
doing.
we
So we'll move on.
we
Yeah,
split the offending language off, so we don't need to go back to the hairs.
Okay. Okay, we were taking Steve's, I think Steve was the last person to speak, and we were going through, cycling through his comments, so we bounced around a bit. I don't want to leave anybody out or overlook some changes that I made along the way, so I'm just going to get back to, this is phase 2. And I think I might have consolidated, I don't think this is new stuff, I think I just might have moved it to talk about site configuration efficiencies, any constraints, intensity of use, because we wanted to get an idea if some of the supporting amenities would necessitate larger buildings, for instance, to accommodate the range of activities and so forth. You know, we really just want to get an accurate picture of how much parking, for instance, would be needed if you wanted to, you know, cram a lot of maybe uses or activities on the site. And okay, so I think we spend a lot of time on this page.
What page are we on now?
6.
Okay. 6.
I'm just moving down. I am going to have this consultant just estimate parking demand. This is something that they can do if they're pretty robust firm. Going on to page 7, page 3, I wanted to make sure that the consultant aggregates the results. So remember, they're starting off with community visioning, but as we go through this process and we do the test fits, we want to have the community will now have the benefit of what these costs are going to be. They're going to have the benefit of seeing, wow, all of these great ideas, this is what it looks like in 3D. And they might be really gung-ho about some of these things. Some of these things might give them pause, or they might have just say maybe some refinements. We want an opportunity for another round of community engagement to assess community preferences, especially where we are asking the consultants to provide some trade-offs, like a matrix of trade-offs, not just siloed costs and set test fits, but some comparative evaluation. Okay, then moving on to 4, having the committee, or excuse me, the consultant work with you, the committee, on helping you just facilitate your recommendations, and more importantly, ensure that they produce a report that you can use in any presentations that you give. So the report, and there would be also there for some technical questions as well. So, you know, summarizing the outreach, the community preferences, the criteria that were used, the comparative costs, benefits, and trade-offs, and how the use or uses, I should clarify that, would meet the committee's overarching criteria per its scope.
Maria, so here you say comparative cost, benefits, and trade-offs. Comparative costs would be the building of whatever that item would be. But the benefits and trade-offs, how is that not require a financial analysis of operational budgets and other things?
For instance, you know, let me just say, your report, we're just focusing on what the consultant is going to be giving a proposal for. This isn't everything that you're going to have in your report that includes the due diligence you have to do talking to the other town departments. But what the consultant will provide, they can provide some benefits and trade-offs. There might be some efficiencies. Let's say there's idea A and idea B, and they're separate. And the consultant, thinking with the, talent and creativity that they have doing this work for a living, they could think, oh, this is a way to combine these two related recreation activities, for instance, and there might be some benefits here. There might be some trade-offs where there might be some less space for parking, or there might be less space for tree canopy. That's what I mean. It's really from a site planning point of view what the benefits and trade-offs are.
Okay, I guess I was thinking way ahead because in my mind, whatever the consultant provides is actually going to be a combination of uses. So it is exactly what you're saying, where we're going to, these are all the things that people want, but we could actually do this and this and this on site. There's enough room and it works. So we could have, like the pool and the multi-generational center coexisting, or we could have the multi-generational center and affordable housing coexisting. So I'm hoping, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm hoping that the consultant will not look at those silos and present just within those silos. We'll actually take everything, mash it together, and say, here are 5 ideas where you could do all these different activities on site that are part of what the committee wants. I mean, the community wants. So that's why, I guess, with the benefits and trade-offs, I mean, they are providing this, which is at the end is going to be some kind of feasibility, financial feasibility of.
There will be some financial component. Like I said, you have to think about parking as well. So there could be an example, like a baseline. This is what something looks like as maybe more stripped down with X parking. This is where maybe we have more efficiencies and we combine more stuff on the site. But I mean, there's a finite area to work with. So
Right.
let's not try to I think
No, that's why I just
do it
needed
for
an
them.
understanding of what C meant.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that we have to understand a baseline and we have to think about the intensity of use increasing. There's a
Okay.
degree of magnitude, and people might want to see a range. I think the select board might want to see a range, because this is not under a snow globe. It's going into a neighborhood, and the neighborhood has to understand different degrees of intensity of use and what that impact might be. So it's not just about cramming it into all we can in a site. That people have to make some judgment calls about that whole spectrum of uses. Okay. All right. And we haven't heard from some other members. I just want to make sure that the conversation doesn't leave other people out. Okay, I'm Michael, Carol.
We're just letting Carlos get it out of his system.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't have
More
any
things to
questions
get out
right
of my
now.
system
Yeah.
too.
Okay. Thank you for the humor. Okay.
Next is evaluation criteria, right?
Yes, and I'm going to work on this a little bit more because I do want to consult with a member of the building commission. So just to make sure that we are getting the criteria right. And I think the minimum qualifications, obviously it's kind of standard to have like a minimum of 5 years experience, site planning, design, construction. And I've put in municipal campuses and multifamily housing. When I had something like, I might have put adaptive experience with adaptive reuse and or historic preservation, and then the ability to estimate the parking demand related to the various uses.
Okay. Yeah, what I'd like to add, and
Yes.
I think it goes under minimum application requirements.
Okay.
but not a criteria for selection.
Mhm.
And that is to include information on their EEO policies.
Yes.
And you know, how they relate to the demographics of the staff. So not as a selection
Yes.
criteria, because
Yep.
you know, in the new world, brave new world that we're in, you know, you can't um, do something like that.
Well, I
But-
think it's
but-
okay. I think
but-
that's certainly
yeah.
all right if you
Well,
have that
but
value.
we want to make sure that the firm agrees with the equity concerns of our town.
Correct.
in the county.
I think that's excellent to put in, and I apologize for not being more specific here because we have
Bernard,
been
we're in
talking about.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, but we still
I
have.
don't know of any firm that would not agree with that. I mean, it's the way you have to. There would be no job opportunity if you didn't agree with them. So I'll just say. But
Well,
Carol
but,
wants
you
to
know,
say
it's
something.
Maria,
Carol?
do you think we should also add another plus, working with a town or public, I don't know the word to use for it. You guys will probably know, but I think that we want people who have worked with town processes before,
Yes. Yep. I don't think we should take that
Public.
for granted. Yep.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, good point.
I think the part that it's not always there is actually the community engagement. So I don't know if you can give under 3 a little bit more of what you're expecting, because there are firms that either do really good community engagement and then lack in design, or firms that are very good designers but aren't really good with the community engagement narrowing down of things. And I think we just need to have a good balance there.
Yep. I think what I might do is, so we'll have like the application requirements. And then when it comes to the comparative evaluation criteria, I think I really need to expand the criteria related to what we're asking them to submit so that they understand how we would judge, like what is an example of exceeds expectations, meets expectations, or doesn't. And that, I will admit, Carlos, that's the part I need to work on a little bit more with my colleagues.
Well, I mean, you're
Yeah, and the
asking
same-
for a community engagement plan, so a firm that can
Right.
submit one that seems reasonably coherent and detailed, you know, that's one way of telling. I mean,
Yep.
they can live up to this, but I do have some more that I wanted to say about the way community.
Okay, the community engagement, sure, sure,
When we get, if we can get back to that.
of course.
And the same way you provide us write-in sample, maybe it is something that they can provide a community engagement sample.
Okay, yep.
And then you're going to redo items 4 and 5 here, which were from
Yes, anything that says mobility, yep. I was working on 2 at the same time, and I wanted to have some parity, so
Mhm.
took some shortcuts. Okay. Anything else on this? Maybe want to talk about community engagement? I think we have some exhibits here. Let's get past this.
Yeah, so can I sort of start there? If you
Sure.
go back to
Absolutely.
page 3,
Okay.
which is item 3, the plan for conducting community engagement. Here, I think things get a little hard to follow. I mean, I think overall the community engagement materials here are daunting. I remember there's a whole list of potential town groups and you know, social kind of bodies that I remember previously it mentioned PTOs, and it suggested there be meetings at every school. Well, I see meetings at every school has been taken out, but there's
Yes.
a 2-page list of
Yep.
potential participants. But just going back to what it says under item 3, it talks about provide a plan for conducting community engagement equitably within the community engagement principles framework. And then a little bit lower than that, it says, see Exhibit 1, principles framework. So I'm looking at this like I looked at
Mhm.
RFPs throughout my career.
Yeah.
So I go look at Exhibit 1.
Mhm.
There is an Exhibit 1. But in this draft, Exhibit 1 is
Right, it's just misnumbered. It's
okay.
really
Exhibit 1 is
it
project
should be Exhibit
milestones.
3.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
Exhibit
all.
3. But then I look at Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 3, and I'm looking for the community engagement principles framework. And I
Yeah,
assume
I probably,
it's an item,
It's
and
not
what I
there.
see is down at the bottom of the page is there's a footnote, community engagement framework up in the first sentence. There's a footnote, and you go to that link, and that's like a 23-page document, created by the Department of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. That is a lot to take in.
Mhm.
And I think it feels like it's going down a rabbit hole of community engagement. And, I don't know where it's all going to end up. That's my perspective coming from a firm that I think did both good design and reasonable community engagement. I would be like putting my hands to my head and saying, how do we do this?
Okay, I think we can make it less daunting. At the same time, when we talk about being inclusive, people sometimes think, aren't I doing a great job? And unless we spell it out, especially where you might have to go out to them, like, in order to have successful participation, it might be that you're going to be, not you, but it's, some configuration of us might have to be on site, say at the BHA or a multifamily complex. It might be difficult for people to maybe hop on a Zoom. There might be different formats where people feel more comfortable. So we can say, everyone is invited. That's like saying we're just going to send out, notices and hope for the best. I do recognize this is daunting. And you're right. I was a little sloppy. I should just use consistent titles and numbers here. And you're right to call me on that. This will get edited again. But, I'm doing my best working with a framework that our colleagues in DEI did put together. And we're providing this to show where it came from, that this is not something that they're expected to create from scratch. So it is a reference document, and it's also good for people to know, what do you mean by DEI? And I think, and that's really how far this goes. It's like, sure, it's a number of pages, but it's not very difficult to read. It's certainly very accessible, and I found it informative. But really what this comes down to are this framework that you are looking at feedback loops. We don't want people just to talk. We want to be able to say, we heard you. We're coming back. This is what we heard. Is there some ground truthing? Is there a disconnect? That's what we mean by feedback loops. People can get really frustrated when they put in all the time, and then it's like, well, where did that survey go? Where did that small group discussion go?
So if I may say, and I'm sure actually some people on this committee, on this Zoom, might actually feel that way right now about the feedback loops. But
well, please tell us more.
I think the housing production plan actually had a very robust community outreach program, and they did try many different ways of engaging people of different that lived in different places and different economic levels and different interests and all that through the community meetings in different parts of the town, incentives for people to come to those meetings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think looking at that a little bit would be helpful because it was less daunting, I think, when it was actually happening. I agree with Steve that when you look at 9 to 15 options and 23 pages of community engagement, a firm might say, I'm not touching this one. I'm moving on. And it might be the right firm because it's the firm that has the experience to do it, but it's just, we're scaring them away. And
So how are you going to deliver on?
Well, what I would,
that's your responsibility.
but what I would not want to happen is that we scare away
No, my question is,
people
how is
who,
this committee going to conduct an equitable process?
oh, and I think we're going to do the same way, for example, that no one wants to use the acronym, but it is the acronym. The CARP program is using, did a pretty extensive community engagement, the housing production plan, where you do have community meetings and on-site meetings on different locations, and I'm afraid to say surveys. I mean, the last survey we had sort of backfired, so last week. So I'm not. There are examples where this has happened, and we just have to look at those more specifically because they have been successful. This is not the first time that we're doing a robust community engagement.
Yeah, I agree with Carlos that the housing production plan did have a robust community participation element, and it was led by a sub-consultant, not the primary consultant. Might be
Right.
worth looking at. I don't remember. I mean, I was involved in this, as part of the review committee, but I don't remember what language was included in the RFP for the housing production plan. But I don't think it was as complicated as this. It might be.
Why don't I just look at the RFP for
Yeah.
the housing production plan and see if we can streamline?
Yeah,
And that
I
might
think
make you feel
that
better.
was useful.
I think good. Glad that you mentioned that housing because it did have pretty robust engagement.
Okay. Um,
And there were
Any-
also surprises about the engagement because we offered 5 different languages for Zoom and the first meeting, and then she reviewed how many people had used those languages, and it was 2 people, 1 person. So then the last meeting, I think, only had 2 languages or 3 languages because it was overkill. But it was worth the try.
Sure. Well, we can also build on that,
Right.
that data as well. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Anything else you want to say about feedback loops in this committee, Carlos?
Oh, the feedback groups?
Yes.
You mean the number 4?
Yes.
Or loops, feedback loops?
Yes.
No, I think we just have to do a better job of listening to the groups and making sure that they feel like they're being listened and not just ignored or the can pushed down the hill. I mean, down the alley.
Yeah, there's a robust, we're spending $150,000 on this. So people, that's the whole point, is to listen to people.
And I guess the real feedback is if we're not doing this activity here, this is why we're not doing it, not just ignoring the fact that we're not doing it, but giving them a very good reason of why we chose to do not, for giving them a reason of why we chose not to do what they were pushing for.
I'm not following you. Who's they?
People who are proposing something and it doesn't happen. So there are groups in town that have been proposing different activities for now almost 10 years, and they get feasibility plans, they get town meeting to vote on resolutions pushing that, and yet nothing's happened. And I think they get frustrated that nothing's happened because they don't really get an answer of why nothing's happened. And I think if we have to tell this is why we chose what we chose to do, and this is why we chose not to do what we chose not to do. I think we need to give them both answers so that people have a better understanding that yes, their choice was looked at, but was not chosen, rather than it was ignored.
I think you're getting ahead of yourself there. You're going to have a process where you funnel through. You don't have any data yet. You have nothing to evaluate, but how your decision criteria is going to be very transparent. That's the whole point for having review criteria. So we don't really know what this committee is going to be recommending.
But we can't choose 15 different things.
No, you can't, but I think that it's important to this exercise is really important.
Yes.
Right? You're going to learn a lot. Steve
Maria?
Sousa. Any
Sorry.
comments? You've seen many an RFP. Oh, if you just want to unmute, thanks.
I agree this, sometimes the complexity is off-putting. I agree with that. So whatever you could do to
Mhm.
get a wide range of people responding to it, I think you need to limit that, right?
Okay, I think what I can do is maybe present this in a way that's not so overwhelming. I think it was just helpful for all of us to see what we're thinking of. But we could probably do this in a way that just
Yeah,
seems a little bit more efficient.
I was like Steve, kind of building on Steve's comments. So you get it, you look at the RFP, and then you go through all this sort of stuff, and you decide whether it's worth going forward, right? So
Sure. Okay.
the simple stuff rather than works better, I think.
Okay.
To attract talent, right?
Appreciate that. Yes.
Right.
Maria, I only have two comments. On the feedback loops, I want to make sure that whatever community engagement we do is obviously robust, but that it's also data driven, right? So that it's not anecdotal, we can actually measure it. And I
Okay.
don't know if that's just assumed or whether something could be put there more language. I'll default to you on that. And the other part is that speaking of daunting, I mean, you look at the list of different groups that we have an exhibit for stakeholders.
Mhm.
Would it be helpful for a consultant to understand that we don't expect a different, a singular mechanism for every one of those things on the list, right? So maybe like
Yes.
3 or 4 mediums, so to speak,
Yep.
that could meet up with them. And I don't know if that's appropriate to put here or that
Mhm.
that's just something again that's assumed, but
Yes. So for instance, that for some groups, it might be like, say, small group meetings and surveys would
Right.
be good. For
Right.
other groups, we expect better participation with surveys.
right.
Okay. Yep, I can do a chart like that.
My concern with Exhibit 4 is that, as with the Oscars, when you give a acceptance speech, not that I've given everyone once, there's always this fear that you forget someone. And I think in this case, there is that there are other groups that have been forgotten, and they may they might be wondering why they haven't been included. So if they're for me, the ideal list would be not going into the letters necessarily, but I mean into the I's and ones and twos, but rather giving the A, B, C's, where it's saying, this is the general list, and then
Okay.
maybe in the future, maybe help them in those lists. But I mean, there are a lot of nonprofits that are not in that list that could, there are gardening groups, there are all kinds of friends of different parks, different things. There's all kinds of things that are not on this list.
I think that's where I was going with that, Carlos, is that there's certainly categories of folks,
Yeah.
right, in groups on this list. And as long as I think that you have to be comprehensive to give them understanding of how broad we want to reach. But you're right, if naming certain organizations and not others at this level may be tough, but I think that certainly there's categories here that we'll be able to reach, or have them come up
Mhm.
with an approach that will get,
Mhm.
all these taken care of, and the ones that we add at some other point, as long as they fit into one of those
Sure.
categories.
Okay, I think that's good. I think when we start working together with the consultant, we can provide these
Yeah.
examples, and it will actually build even more organically too. I think we can create a network where maybe there are ambassadors that can help.
And you may want to correct Malcolm's last name.
I beg your pardon?
You may want to correct Malcolm's last name.
Yes, I will. Oh, yes, it's
C
C.
rather than an
Yeah,
H.
and I mentioned to Maria earlier that, any listing of groups has got to be updated to make sure that they still exist, because a number of them don't.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is take Carlos's suggestion and not have the Roman numeral
Yeah.
1 and 2, and that way it's just better that way.
Yeah, if a consultant says, well, how do I reach renters? Then you could say, well, you know, there is
Right, right.
tenants union or whatever. I
Right.
mean, if such a thing
Yeah.
does exist, but yeah,
Oh.
I mean, I think it would be good not to, under recreation, I'm not so sure what the golf constituency would have to say about this 3-acre site, for example.
Right.
Indoor,
Anything might
indoor,
be another matter, but golf, hockey, you know, I don't know.
Sure. I just want to get back to Michael's, because I do want to take it seriously, and I don't want to like say, oh yeah, I understand it, and then I come away from this meeting not. So for the feedback loops, yes, it's important to have data. I do feel that some, we can talk to the consultant how best to do this. If some of these things are like you're getting in a room and you're taking a vote, or if you're just maybe aggregating, I don't want to say that what I'm hoping that they will do is they will aggregate data based on the different media that they use to get feedback.
I guess what my point is that if it's one way to tabulate something that's done on a survey, right? That's measurable, and it's difficult to do it, to tabulate results of an in-person meeting, right? So that's why when you talk about feedback loops, if we're making a presentation to a group or we're on site soliciting ideas, that I would hope that the consultant would give us some sort of framework to record and to quantify or
Yes.
the
Yep.
results from different types of
I agree.
outreach.
And I think it can be done in a group where you're giving people, like, say, if you do have say you have an online survey and say you supplement that with some large group forums, you can have polls. And
Sure.
and I absolutely.
yeah, the
Yep.
Center Street presentation
Mhm.
was a great example where
Yep.
everybody, they had a QR code,
Yep.
and with your cell phone, you could go into this poll and you could vote live in there. Now, obviously, Mike, it wasn't scientific, is the people that showed up was not scientific how they showed up. So
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just saying, you and I put a table out in front of
yeah,
Tappan Street and get solicit ideas about recreation, and the context is important, right?
exactly.
That's
Okay. All right. So it's about 8 o'clock on the button. I just want to just generally any further comments about this. I'm in terms of timing. So we do have this grant. It has been announced. What we are waiting for from the state is the contract, because we formally have to have the select board accept it, and they need that contract in order to formally accept it, and then it's executed, and then at that point we can send out the RFP. So I thought that this probably could happen in December, maybe early January, and I was thinking that I will send a clean copy of this after I've talked to some of my colleagues about the things that I went over with you, and then I can give you that copy. But I don't think we need to meet like a third time to go over it unless, and you certainly can give me individual comments too, as well.
Okay.
So that's the
So-
timetable. Bernard?
Yeah, anything else before
Public
we end the
comment?
meeting, or at least let the public comment for a few minutes?
I just had a quick question
Okay.
of just how this is going to work. So the shuttle consultant, which we're not have nothing to do with, how are they going to know? Because depending on what use you use, you have a different demographic and a different number of people that may need a shuttle, and a different frequency or whatever it is. How are they going to know? It's the chicken and the egg. How are they going to know what to um, what to study before they know what the use is going to be?
So they have a lot of work to do, because this isn't just about making it Fisher Hill centric. And that's the goal here, is that there is a need to connect North and South Brookline. There are different groups who have unmet needs in general. And I think that we can, in terms of like ridership, you know, just thinking about, you can extrapolate what could be used at the site, but they can be done in parallel with, again, maybe some feedback loops, depending on how things are going. But if you look at the things that we're putting in the list, like outdoor pool, recreation center, intergenerational, equitable, and then you think about the unmet need, I don't think you have to be really scientific about this. Is, if you're going to have, is, you know, no matter what it is, if it's going to be intergenerational, then you're going to think about the different groups who have that unmet need and where they live geographically, what age groups they are. I just don't think that that's going to be a heavy lift for them.
Okay.
All right. Regarding the shuttle, yes, I do have that separate RFP. I'm working with my transportation division colleagues, and they're going to have their own, you know, process and boards for looking at that. But really, the goal is to have this consultant provide you with what different service models could look like. They'll also do their own matrix and what those annual costs might be. That's going to be relevant to you and how you make, as Carlos was saying, like, what are the operational costs tied to having municipal uses here? It's just, this is a very car dependent site. So that's the whole point of having that study dovetail along with yours. Okay, and there will be outreach as well for that study. So I will turn it over to you, Bernard, to conduct public comment.
Okay, first person is Carla Benka. And let's limit our comments to 3 minutes. We don't have a timer on the screen, but I do have a watch.
Okay.
Thank you, Bernard. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, and one was whether the ballot, the wording of the debt exclusion ballot question was taken into account when the charge to the committee was written, and whether all the information that voters were given before the vote on the debt exclusion ballot question, whether that information was reviewed. And the reason I ask that is because my recollection, and I was fairly involved with this, given my role on the advisory committee, there was a very heavy emphasis on town needs, and whether it was recreation or training centers or a 9th school, or, you know, the list was a mile long. I don't recall housing being listed at that time, which is not to say that it is not a town need, but even the list of things, of potential uses for the property, mentioned affordable housing. It didn't say disposition of property to a private developer for housing. I doubt very many people, if any, voted to raise their taxes by 13, whatever it was, to raise the $13 million plus in order to give or even sell the land to a private developer for housing development. The other point that I wanted to make was that there was a package of warrant articles that town meeting was asked to vote on, one of which rezoned the parcels on the west side of Fisher Avenue to an overlay district for municipal use. Those municipal uses included government office buildings, recreation with a special permit, a library or a museum, and again, affordable housing or public housing. No type of housing was mentioned, and I think that overlay district was developed by planning department staff. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, and Les.
I have 2 comments. One, and Maria, this is not at all a criticism. This is just my perception. When I heard it, I thought Maria had said that the consultant will have access to the community visioning. And my perception is there has not yet really been community visioning yet for the Fisher Hill property. there was a report that Chaz gave, but that was primarily based on the survey of what the needs were of all the town departments. There was a full survey of what everybody in the town wanted. Was it that woodworking lathes? Was it storage for their papers, etc.? So I never, if there had been community visioning for Fisher Hill, I would have been there every single day, every single night. And sorry for being late tonight because I went to town hall. I wanted to be at this meeting so badly. Second, when we talk about all the groups that should be invited, children don't go to meetings. They don't really have the same sort of voice. And I happen to love the senior citizen idea. I'm a senior citizen, but seniors are very organized and very vocal compared to children. So if you go to a PTO, maybe you can ask the parents, but there's not really what we could say is an official pool group, because how do you ask a baby who's just learning to go underwater and knows to come back up out of the water? So to consider all groups somehow, and to know that there are groups that you're not going to be able to reach, or you've got to figure out how you're going to reach them, because the pool would have all ages, all income, all background uses. Thank you.
Great. And Anne, I just want to say regarding community visioning, it's the upcoming community visioning. It's just
Okay.
community engagement. There's no past.
Okay, I thought there was a past. And I thought, where
Okay.
was
No,
I?
and
I
there
would
would
have been there.
there would also be outreach to teens and students. And we also figured that families with very young children would represent their needs.
Okay.
But thank you.
And you don't have to be a kid in order to understand issues that kids have. So, we expect the parents and other adults to, think about that, just like you don't have to be a tree to understand, botany or whatever it is. Janice?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Bernard. And it's been interesting listening to this.
What happened to her?
Janice,
Yep, okay,
Hello.
I'm here. Oh, now I'm here. So, no, I appreciate this very much, this conversation. So I have a couple of thoughts, though. Community engagement is starting to really bug me a lot, mainly because we have so many community engagement activities now, and I'm on another one. I'm on the comp plan. And I was thinking that it might be a good way to sort of jumpstart this one to somehow be included in the work of the comp plan, which is going to happen in January, and because that is like this, a whole town community engagement effort. And it would be, I think, more efficient for us to kind of not sort of annoy people in the community with all these parts of community engagement, and really do something a little bit more comprehensive, which I think would serve Fisher Hill, this process would serve the broader comp plan process much better than lots of, separate tiny initiatives. Especially the comp plan and this plan are both townwide. So it really, I would say that about the shuttle too, that these are all really townwide visions, and that we might be able to get even more participation if we didn't wear people out in the community so much by having all these separate visionings. So that's just one thought I had. The other thought I had was that, well, you know what? I'm going to leave it with one thought and leave it to you to follow up. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I would like to see us be really successful in reaching people, and I think we can maybe do a little bit, work together a little bit more so that we can really do community engagement in a more holistic way. Thanks.
Thank you. Elisa Jonas?
Hi, I'm sorry, Janice. I appreciate you're only doing one thing. I do want to cover just two things. One is talking about financial feasibility. I'm still not exactly clear how that's going to happen, because the response, Maria, that you gave was that we should ask people working in the town. And I know that no one will feel comfortable making any kinds of determinations without a consultant telling them how much something might cost. And I'm thinking right now of the indoor ice rink feasibility study. It went quite a long way locating sites, spending money on feasibility studies about whether it should look like this or look like this. And then it was determined it was $50 million and it was just thrown out. So I really do think that financial feasibility is a crucial element, and I don't think it should be a minor one, and that we can just expect that town personnel will have that information, or maybe they might have it, but they will not be willing to make a statement about it. So I really think that needs to be taken care of a little more seriously, because it's going to be a waste of time if what we decide is a major recreation center that's going to cost 50 million and we don't want to spend 50 million.
No.
So that's the one topic. And the second one, again, it's about community engagement. And I'm always concerned with everything the town does about the level of community engagement. I've done a lot of community organizing at this point. I've attended a lot of meetings. I've organized a lot of meetings in my neighborhood. I know what happens. People come to meetings when they're upset about something. When I did something on Bournewood Hospital where people were worried about their own safety, they came in droves to our meetings. When it was something like having a shuttle bus for South Brookline to North Brookline, and I leafleted every single house, and it's something that people have talked about forever. I think we got about 10 people. So I'm concerned that having small group meetings is not truly going to reflect the community. And I'm going to say again, I was in the Moderators Committee on Parking, and we did a very cheap survey. We stuck the survey into, I think, the census. It was into the census envelope. We got a 50% response rate from the town, which is huge, which is more than we ever do with most other things. And it was data driven. We had we had a statistician on our committee, and she did the statistics. So that's a very cheap way to reach a lot of people and reach some level of statistical significance, which I'm concerned we won't get otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone else's hands raised, so I will end the meeting. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Maria, for shepherding this along. Bye now.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Maria.
Have a good night.
Thank you.